देवेन, आप अब जाहिर सी बात है कि इस बार क्योंकि बजट टिपिकली जो पिछले कुछ समय से होते रहा है कि टू सम एक्सटेंट ये थोड़ा नॉन इवेंट हो जाता है मार्केट के लिए, वैसा नहीं होगा। लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेंस टैक्स, एसटीटी, सीटीटी, इन सब को लेकर काफ़ी कुछ एक्सपेक्टेशन है भी मार्केट में। लेकिन लॉन्ग टर्म कैपिटल गेंस टैक्स पर आपका व्यू क्या है, क्योंकि इसकी बात हो रही है इतने समय से? क्या ये प्राइस्ड इन है? 2 या 3 साल की विंडो बनना है इसकी?
जहाँ तक मैं समझता हूँ कि कैपिटल गेन टैक्स को दो तरह से देखना पड़ेगा। एक तो जो आज की तारीख में एफआईआई के ऊपर जो टैक्स है सॉरी, वो टैक्स की जो क्लैरिटी एक अच्छी आनी बनती है, वो क्लैरिटी ये बजट के अंदर आई थिंक गवर्नमेंट विल ट्राई टू ब्रिंग इन, बिकॉज टू ए ग्रेटर एक्सटेंट आई थिंक द मनी विच इज कमिंग थ्रू पी नोट्स I think is having a subjective issue on the taxation aspect. Second thing, the way in which some of the long-term capital gain tax related I think activities have happened in past and income tax had to get heavy on those people. मेरे ख्याल से वो विंडो के ऊपर आई थिंक गवर्नमेंट का एक नज़रिया अलग से बनेगा। मे बी आई थिंक दैट मे हैव इट सम रिपरकेशन ऑन द एग्जिस्टिंग एक्टिविटी एज वेल, बट मैं नहीं मानता हूँ कि करंटली जो 1 साल का एक कैपिटल गेन टैक्स का जो एग्जम्पशन है मार्केट के अंदर, उसके अंदर कोई ज़्यादा बदलाव आएगा। क्योंकि मेरा ऐसा मानना है कि गवर्नमेंट का एक तरफ नजरिया ऐसा रहेगा कि इफ द टैक्स इज कलेक्टेड एट सोर्स थ्रू एसटीटी, देन probably I think it's a clean tax. On the other side, I think if it is collected through long-term capital gain tax, then probably I think you will have a larger amount of money to spend on the collection itself. मैं ऐसा मानता हूँ कि गवर्नमेंट will probably I think have a prudent role to play in this particular approach, in which I think they will continue with the STT and probably not touch the long-term capital gain tax for the domestic investors, ऐसा मेरा मानना है।
Andrew, you mentioned that you like private banks right now, but how are you reading the whole NBFC space, especially after demonetization, where demonetization concerns or bruises have emerged?
Yeah, they're facing a lot of problems, aren't they, with with collections and obviously growth, and I think that's going to continue for another quarter for them. So I think I don't really want to be in this space at the moment. I think valuations, if they come down a little bit more from where they are today, they might become more interesting. But I think the pain is still there for them, and most of them have. Again, most of the companies who have reported have articulated that they're seeing some recovery in payments, but it's still two months behind. So that is a concern, and obviously, if the budget and rural economy is not seen to be helping to pick up the economy, then these companies will face more problems. So it's a space I don't need to be in, and I think the private banks, with the big ones which have reported, have shown their resilience and their ability to again do well in difficult markets. Or market environment. So I'd rather kind of play that area at the moment. I think the only other area which I'm looking at is obviously it's a dark horse for the second half of the year is the real estate sector, which again I'm just going to see what the finance minister does for the housing sector. But certainly demand for housing is going to continue over the year. So I might again look down at either housing finance companies, building materials. And then possibly the real estate companies in the second half of the year.
देवेन, अब जो हमने ऑलरेडी देख लिया मार्केट में, या फिर क्वार्टरली रिजल्ट्स जिस तरह से फैक्टर इन हो गए, उसके बाद बजट के लिए कोई 5 स्टॉक अगर आपको पिक करने हो जो कि आपको लग रहा है बजट के बाद भी चलेंगे, तो वो कौन से होंगे?
आई थिंक जो कंपनीज के अंदर हमें ज़्यादा कॉन्फिडेंस दिख रहा है उसके अंदर एग्री स्पेस में आई थिंक 1 या 2 कंपनी है। इसमें माइक्रो इरिगेशन में आई थिंक जैन इरिगेशन ईपीसी इंडस्ट्रीज़ है, और दूसरी तरफ देखें तो आई थिंक यूपीएल इज़ लुकिंग फेवरेबली प्लेस आई थिंक एज फार एज द लॉन्ग टर्म प्रॉस्पेक्ट्स आर कंसर्न। सिमिलरली जो हिसाब से ब्रॉडबैंड नेटवर्क कंट्री के अंदर बनने जा रहा है, उसके अंदर स्टारलाइट टेक्नोलॉजी लुक्स आई थिंक फॉर्मिडेबल प्ले। आई थिंक इट इज लुकिंग इंटरेस्टिंगली पोजिशन। We also find some of the interesting companies in auto and auto ancillary, particularly Tata Motors with the revival in the commercial vehicle segment looks I think brilliant from the domestic market point of view, and equally well placed I think from the JLR point of view I think in the global marketplace. So I think such companies which are having fundamental strength, हमें I think ज़्यादा confidence है, with budget or without budget, I think these companies are expected to perform better going forward.
Andrew, a lot of incentives are expected in housing, in infrastructure segment in this budget. Also, we will see a special push towards rural economy. That is the expectations right now. So, are these the kind of sectors that you would advise one should stay invested or buy?
Yeah, as I said, I think the housing sector is something that I'm getting more interested in, and whilst I'm not jumping, with 2 feet yet into real estate companies, it could be the dark horse for the second year. So the way I'm going to play the housing sector, because I think demand will continue, even if the push is not evident, even post the budget or during the budget speech, is that building materials is probably the way I'm going to play, or housing finance companies the way I'm going to play this going forward. So I'm quite bullish on the overall housing sector as a growth area. Infrastructure, we've been seeing some good results from the capital goods players. Their order books are pretty full. Again, as usual with these companies, it's all about execution. So if they can continue to execute a little bit better than they have been doing, which is evident in some of the results, then you could see a re-rating for this sector. But I'm not thinking that even in infrastructure it takes time for these orders to flow through to the bottom line profitability. So you have to look at the near term orders for the capital goods players, because that's what's going to affect your earnings in the next 1 year.
Andrew, what's your take on IT stocks? We did see the early jitteriness once Mr. Trump came in. But more than that, I would actually focus on the quarterly numbers that they have reported so far. What's your strategy on IT right now?
My strategy remains as it has been for the past 2 years, in that I remain negative on the sector. I think that whole growth scenario which those companies enjoyed in the IT sector is gone. And they have to reinvent themselves, and reinventing themselves is, as you can see from the numbers, is fraught with ups and downs and management changes. So I still think they have to reinvent themselves, and I'm not paying what I believe now to be a more commodity type business. I don't want to pay growth type PEs for these companies. So if it gets towards single digit PEs, then I might start to look at them again. But there's better growth stories in and around India domestically, then I need to look at IT companies. The only companies I'm looking at would do kind of the exposures. Obviously, if I'm correct in that global economy is going to start picking up, then I'd be looking at companies with international exposure in either from autos through to auto parts, and particularly anyone who's got a strong foothold in the US and increasingly Europe, as Europe starts to improve in terms of their growth rates in the economy. So those are the kind of focus areas on international companies.
देवेनी, हाउसिंग फाइनेंस कंपनीज पर अभी आपका क्या व्यू है, और इन्वेस्टमेंट के लिहाज से ये पूरा सेगमेंट आपको कैसा लग रहा है, स्पेशली जिस तरह के भी अर्निंग्स आए हैं? हमने ज़्यादातर कंपनियों के नंबर स्ट्रॉन्ग देखे हैं, नेट इंटरेस्ट मार्जिन में भी ग्रोथ देखी है, एसेट क्वालिटी भी स्टेबल रही है, कॉस्ट ऑफ फंड्स इन कंपनियों के नीचे आ रहे हैं, और अगर रियलिटी में डिमांड ऊपर जाएगी, डिमांड टेक ऑफ करेगी, तो भी ये सेगमेंट बेनिफिशियरी रहेगा. आपका व्यू ओवरऑल ग्रोथ के लिहाज से क्या है हाउसिंग फाइनेंस कंपनीज का, और अगर इन्वेस्टमेंट करनी हो तो कौन सा स्टॉक चुनना चाहिए?
आई थिंक जो हिसाब से आपने बताया, डेफिनेटली द डिमांड आउटलुक इज़ रिमेनिंग वेरी पॉजिटिव. गवर्नमेंट का जो थ्रस्ट है लो कॉस्ट हाउसिंग के ऊपर, और एट द सेम टाइम जो रियल एस्टेट रेगुलेटरी अथॉरिटी जो आ रही है, उसके हिसाब से आई थिंक ये पूरे का पूरा सेक्टर को काफ़ी हद तक एक सिस्टमेटिक आउटलुक मिलेगा, ग्रोथ मिलेगा. मैं ऐसा मानता हूँ कि हाउसिंग फाइनेंस कंपनीज करीबन 20% रेट के ऊपर सालाना ग्रोथ कर सकती है, CAGR बेसिस के ऊपर ग्रोथ कर सकती है. तो दैट सिचुएशन इज़ रिमेनिंग वेरी फेवरेबल ऑन द डिमांड साइड. On the other side, the funding part of the business, deposit rates are coming down for most of the borrowers, and housing finance company के लिए भी deposit term होते हैं, and साथ में उनको I think even they reduce the rate of interest for the borrowers, they are still getting good amount of spread और नीम जो बोलते हैं उनको, उसका इसके अंदर उनको benefit मिलता है. तो ये दोनों तरीके से देखो तो हाउसिंग फाइनेंस कंपनीज आर रिमेनिंग इन अ स्वीट स्पॉट, मेरा ऐसा मानना है. And I think selectively 2 or 3 companies which we look onto, I think they are looking all interesting. LIC Finance, Group Finance और HDFC, तीन कंपनीज काफ़ी इंटरेस्टिंग दिख रहे हैं. तो आई थिंक लॉन्ग टर्म इन्वेस्टमेंट के हिसाब से इन्वेस्टमेंट बना रहना चाहिए.
बिल्कुल. तो एक बार देख लेते हैं इस बीच मार्केट को भी. निफ्टी 36 पॉइंट ऊपर है 8512 के लेवल पर और अब 8500 के ऊपर होल्ड कर रहा है. एंड्रू, you know, we saw how Bharti Airtel has bleeded because of the Reliance Jio impact. You know, this impact, do you see it lasting on stocks like Bharti and Idea? Because today also Bharti and Idea both are actually under pressure because, you know, as far as Reliance Jio is concerned, they are yet to come into full play, but at least the signs are that they will try and extend the free offer period even beyond March.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the regulators will allow them, but you know, again, it's a sector which is, you know, going to see continued pressure on both you know, revenues and margins for the existing players, and you know, there's obviously talk of possible mergers within the sector, which is probably keeping you know, prices a little bit higher than they should be. But you know, what we do know is that Reliance are going to want to take huge market share, and they're going to make everyone else pay the same price as they are in terms of lower profitability or you know, kind of falling into losses. So it's a sector I don't need to be thinking about for at least one more quarter. So when I say one more quarter, I'll see what obviously Reliance does at the end of March. But I think by the kind of, you know, June-ish, it could be an interesting sector because I think maybe the pain of what Reliance will be doing will be kind of well played out. But I don't think I need to think about it right now. But it's certainly on the radar. I'm not saying it's like the dark horse of real estate, which I do feel more optimistic. But I think there'll be a valuation point where, you know, the likes of the incumbents will look attractive, but it's not yet.
Well, thanks Andrew for talking to us. शुक्रिया आपने समय दिया जी बिजनेस को. देवेन, आपका भी शुक्रिया शामिल होने के लिए शो में और सभी सेक्टर्स पर स्टॉक्स पर अपनी राय रखने के लिए.